Thank you, everybody, for attending our June webinar. Our topic for this month is Extend the Editorially Accessibility Checker. And our speaker is John Jamison, who I've had the pleasure to meet at New Jersey Camp. So it's a pleasure to have him speak for Drupal for Gov. Before I hand over the reins to him, I'd like to share some information about Drupal for Gov and what we do. We are a community of open source advocates, and we are interested in all things open source. So in addition to this webinar that we hold every third Thursday at 3 p.m., our most popular event, which will be coming up in August 14th through the 15th, is Drupal GovCon. We just released the schedule a few days ago, so please go to the website and check it out. When we can, we also hold global training days and half-day training days. And we also assist in organizing Gov Summit at DrupalCon North America. If you're interested in doing a webinar or you have any questions, please reach out to us at drupalforgov@gmail.com. We also have a Slack channel, Gov Drupal, and a channel on Drupal called Gov. And we are really active and we communicate often on LinkedIn. In addition to talking about Drupal for Gov and what we do, I also like to share what other camps are doing. So July 11th through the 13th, if you are located in North Carolina, check out Asheville Drupal Camp. And I also mention, I don't need to mention Drupal GovCon, which will be held at the University of Maryland, August 14th through the 15th. If you're interested or if you work for an organization that has the space, we are always looking for places to have half-day or multi-day training days. Please reach out to us and email us using the email info@drupalforgov.us. And we always upload our webinars to YouTube. So check out our channel. And if you want to look at previous webinars that we've held, check out our channel on YouTube. And last but definitely not least, I am pleased to introduce John Jameson. He is a digital accessibility developer at Princeton University and a maintainer of the editorial accessibility checker module. So thank you, John. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
All right. And I'll start sharing mine. Let's see here. That should work. All right. Thank you. Hi, yes. That about covers it. I'm one of the maintainers for Editorially. Yeah, so we're going to do a little history of the module today, and then talk about configuration tips, things that we do, things that people have written in that they do, and then I'll dig into some of the more fancy stuff. There's a whole JavaScript event interface that exposes the ability to write custom tests, that sort of thing. So we'll fly through. Um, and yeah, so I will start by saying my job is to test and train at Princeton. Um, this is a very old very old model that probably a lot of you share. Uh, when I say very old, I mean very old. I take it back to the Middle Kingdom of Egypt. This is on display at the Met. It's an old writing board from 4,000 years ago on which someone has written some hieroglyphics. And in things that never change, their teacher has made corrections in red pen. Um, so this is the model we use today. Accessibility, there's the WCAG Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. They're manual testing. Things like this should be a button tag, this should be a heading, this needs more contrast. Uh, is there things we learn, things we do? There are tools. There are certainly tools. This is Wave. I use Wave almost every day. I love Wave. But when I turn Wave on for the first time in a training for people, it looks a lot like hieroglyphics. So they're for trained users with time to dedicate to their use. And the problem is, most of our users are content authors. They're busy people. The workflow that's imagined by training programs is that they're going to create well-structured content as they were taught in accessibility training. They're going to run manual accessibility checks. They're going to fix accessibility issues. They're going to visit some crawler or QA dashboard. They'll fix those issues too. And then maybe they'll attend another training, improve their skills even further. Um, yeah, so I spent 15 years supporting content authors directly in my previous role. I can tell you their actual workflow, which is to copy text from a PDF and paste. So, yeah, inaccessibility it should be a decision. It shouldn't be the default. So, a couple tips. I mean, one of the things, examples I'd said in previous presentations I wish we could do. Now we can do it because the latest release of Editoria11y includes this. There's a config option where you can say someone's inserting a table. It should come with a header row instead of no headers at all. It's a simple thing, but all these years of heckling people saying you should have a header row, making it the default just kind of takes that problem away. Colors, as an example, we don't have the option for authors to pick colors and background colors in our system. There's a bunch of predefined styles. They can pick things that are very just different color combinations, but someone's made that decision. So I sort of say start there. This is a presentation about a checker, but it's better to intercept problems than to check for them. But when you need to check, that correction should be automatic. It should be instant. It should be in plain language. You should not have to train people and say, remember to run the checker. It should just pop up, whatever checker you're using. So here's an example from Editoria11y, and it's popped up and said, this table has no header cells. And then it says to fix, if this contains data that's meaningfully organized. It goes on and on. But it is an attempt to write this in plain language and not to mention WCAG or anything like that, and just to say, hey, maybe click on properties and add a header row. I will not say this is amazing, but it's open source. Send me a pull request if you have better wording. I'd love it. So, Editoria11y tests. These are going to test for content mistakes alone. One of the key principles that went into developing this was the idea that you don't want to be heckling content editors for issues with the theme or the module code that they can't fix. So it checks for mistakes you can make in CKEditor and Gutenberg, things like that. So things like meaningless links, click here, fake headings, skipped heading levels, fake list items, images with no alt text, images with bad alt text. It has a couple tests that I've written to check for common suspicious alt text, missing table headers, links to PDFs, video and audio alternatives, closed captioning, too much caps lock, that kind of thing. Some of these are what I call manual checks. These are things where it might be fine. So you can ignore them. So here's a manual check saying, is this link meaningful and concise? This link's text is click here. I think that's a problem. But maybe that's never going to get fixed. And so these manual checks, they get single click buttons. Mark this as ignored, which only affects the current user. They can just say, stop bothering me, or mark this as okay. And marking as okay syncs back to Drupal, syncs to all other users, and it won't bother anyone about this. And you can control in the permission system who's allowed to do that. Those sync also include those results, the issues themselves. So Drupal reports then has site-wide reports with all these test results, dismissals, things like that. You can browse and go through. You can see what's been dismissed. You can undo that dismissal. And then there's some manual tools. I showed Wave there. This has a few of those manual tools that are most relevant to some content authors who had some training and know what these things are. So there's a heading outline visualizer that'll show you how headings are nested, and it'll draw the heading number on the page so you can see where those are. It has an alt text visualizer, which will draw the alt text on the image and show the thumbnail list at the bottom. They're optional tools, but they're there. And that's it. I mean, I like to say the demo tends to be pretty short because one of the key things I'm trying to do is make this just intuitive. So there's a lot there, but there's only a few screens. So what could possibly go wrong, you say? Well, a lot can go wrong. There's a lot of configuration. Some sites need configuration to prevent alerting on every page for theme issues. I mean, say you have an image in the footer that's getting a manual check on every image for some reason. You want to fix that in config, or your content authors are going to stop getting any benefit from this module because it's going to show an error on every page. Some sites need config to prevent unhelpful alerts. This is an example of a page where There's 40 PDFs on this page. They're fine. This is evidence of insurability, things like that for HR. These are fine. You don't want the content authors to be getting these sorts of alerts where they're supposed to click OK on everything on a page that's designed to hold accessible things. There's config, we'll get there. The Yes, the accordion issue. Some sites have accordions, tabbed interfaces, carousels, things like that, hidden content. And so editorially might see an issue and flag it, and there's a little button on the toolbar where you can say jump to next issue, and it jumps to that issue, and it can't get there because the thing it's trying to highlight is off screen or invisible or whatever. And so it will pop up an alert, but say, note this content may not be visible. Look for it inside the outline container. And it's going to try to guess what the nearest ancestor is that is visible. And I'm just literally doing a lot of if statements against CSS, looking for things like hidden attributes and size and things like that. It's guessing. It does a pretty good job. I've done a lot of testing of this, but there's ways to fix this. So we'll get into that at the end. But usually, I will say usually on most sites, it just works. You turn it on, it works. So let's dig into the config. So you start like any other module, you install it. So you can install it straight from the as an independent module. You can also install it through Drupal CMS as the accessibility tools recipe. The recipe just installs the module and puts a little bit of default config on it that plays well with other recipes, but they're the same under the hood. And then once it's in there, the first thing to do, and it says this on the config page, start in permissions. Editorially exposes several permissions. It takes some guesses as to who should be able to view editorially based on who can edit content. Uh, but there's separate permissions for things like viewing the checker at all, which roles see the checker and which don't, who can mark things as hidden, who can mark things as okay, who can view the site-wide dashboard, who can administer common things. But start there. And Marco's OK is pretty useful. For our own inner system, we give that to all editors. There's other places where you might only give that to people who are trained and know what they're doing. And then match your theme. I include 3 sets of CSS, so light theme, dark theme, whatever looks good. There's also ways to inject your own CSS. I have a snippet here. If you haven't already gotten the link, you'll get the slides. And this is documented. But you can in your theme put a JavaScript variable in that says I would like to override editorially's options, and then say, hey, editorially, here's my own CSS URL, and then all of the little widgets that pop up that are inside web component shadow DOM magic, it'll inject that CSS reference. So you can write your own theme if you want. And then we really get going into the config. So first big decision is how annoying you want to be. So when someone edits a page and saves the page, editorially in the module recognizes that this page was just modified. And so you can change the behavior in that situation. So if it detects issues, it can pop open automatically and draw things all over the page, always or only on the first detection. So it'll store local storage on that person's browser as to whether the number of issues on the page has changed. Or never, and never will respect. They can open and close it, and it'll respect their preference from page to page. It'll still run, and it'll still throw the error count in the corner in the notification bar, but it won't force itself open if they're trying to stay closed. You can come back and change this later, but I keep inching the assertiveness up over time as people start ignoring things. Yes, so you'll choose what to check and what to skip next. So these are 2 different settings. Your page has a whole bunch of parts, and not all these parts are editable. So check content in these containers. You can give it a list of CSS selectors and say, I want you to check the main area and the footer, but not the header. Or skip over these elements. You can say, within the main area, don't check this view, let's say. So if you've not played with CSS before, your browser has a browser inspector. I'm not going to teach you how to use it in this presentation, but you turn it on, you can right-click on something and say, what's this thing? And it will throw open the HTML for you on the sidebar, and it'll show up in a bunch of selectors. And so it says this is a footer tag with an ID of footer, and it has class of footer, that kind of thing. So this is the selectors you start working from. And so you go back to here and you say, okay, what do I do? So you can use Either way, these configurations will both work. I can either say skip over the footer logo. I don't want you to alert on the footer logo. So I can say footer.logo, skip over these elements, and so editorially will check the whole page and ignore issues with the logo. Or I could say check the main area and the footer.right column. So only check these two parts of the page. Uh, Both these work the same, but the second's faster because you're checking fewer elements rather than checking all the elements and then going back and dropping one result. So when you're configuring it, prefer checking less to skipping things. Speed matters. I'll also say different CSS selectors work faster and slower. Some are just harder on the browser. So footer.logo, that's a great selector. Basic tag class selectors, very well optimized in browsers. Footer A, just as fast, but it selects all the links in the footer, including the ones in the right column. So it's not specific. You want to be specific or you're going to be accidentally not checking things you meant to check. And you want to be fast. So the has selector is really cool. You could say link has dot logo image, which would check any links that have a logo image inside them. And you could say ignore this, and that will work, but the has selector is a very slow selector. And this editorial is running on every load. So if you have a lot of slow selectors, you may find it actually starts to slow the browser down a little bit. It shouldn't. The whole thing should run in 10 to 20 milliseconds if things are going right. You shouldn't know it's running. If you know it's running, something's wrong. So there are some built-in skips. If you're ever troubleshooting and you're saying, why is this not getting alerted? I don't understand. I will say the default config is hiding things like images and links that are ARIA hidden uh, or have role equals presentation on them. These are things developers use to deliberately hide things from screen readers. So if it's hidden from the screen reader, there's no sense in me checking how good the alt text is. So I ignore those automatically. List and heading tests inside tables, I'm not running those. So if you have a table cell and there's asterisks and a fake list in the heading, I'm not going to flag that because I don't know that that's not data. So there's things here where the tests just have so many false positives in those situations that I just turn the test off automatically. And Drupal's admin UI, I'm ignoring things that look like admin UI in the code. Yeah. So, all right, last note on that. When you're setting it up, don't nest checked containers. So the example here I have is let's say we have that footer.right column. If you said check content in main and dot right, and the footer has dot right and the main has dot right, that dot right in the main is going to get checked by main and dot right, which means an error in that is going to get flagged twice. Uh, I'm not deduping. Again, performance really matters, and I would much rather make a little more work for you in getting this set up correctly at the config page than having to run extra loopy functions when I'm working. So, be warned. All right. You work down the config page, you're now getting to a flyout that says advanced config. So let's get in there. A lot of this is compatibility with other modules. So, here's a visually obvious one. Everybody wants the bottom right corner of the page. So I've written a function that if you give me a list of selectors, when I go to draw my widget, I will go look for these selectors, measure their width, and slide over to get out of the way. So you can say things like Claro toggle dialog, don't draw on top of that. And I actually put that in, I think, as one of my default configs just because Drupal CMS has that encouraged. So that's there for you. You're welcome. You can also switch the panel to pin to the left if you prefer. Edit links. So I now add, as of a recent version, links inside the tip that pops up that says, hey, go right into the page editor or go right into the layout builder editor to work on this issue, which is immensely convenient, except that your average issue is not available in both. Or on the page, there might be views on the page that this is not helpful at all. You see this issue, and then you click page editor, and you go look at the content, and the text with that issue isn't there. That's not only not helpful, it's downright confusing. So there's a config item here where you can say, give me a list of selectors for things where those edit links are just useless, and then it won't put links on tips inside those containers. It's handy. The CKEditor heading dropdown. I have this heading skip detection when you're looking at a page, but I can also check live while people are texting while people are typing inside CKEditor. Uh, well, the first heading in CKEditor, I can't check if that has skipped a level unless I know what level it should be. So if you have, say, Layout Builder and you have paragraphs, you have whatever module you have, and you have CKEditor fields where they're going to be drawn nested under, say, a heading 3, and so the headings in that block should start with heading 4. You can give editorially selectors for that edit field and what heading level should be the base level for that specific field. Do you have to do this? No, you don't do this at all. But if you want to get fancy, you can, and it makes the live editing checking work a little more magically. You can also check dynamic and shadow DOM content. And if you don't know what that means, great. This is not something you need to worry about. But if you are writing custom web components and you're doing all kinds of Ajaxy magic and things like that, and content's coming and going, you can tell editorially to watch for those things. And I just don't have this turned on by default because it takes a little bit of CPU overhead, and I'm running on thousands of sites, and most of those sites don't want this turned on. So you can just flip it on, say watch for changes. You can give it a list of specific web components you want it to watch for and check if you have specific widgets and things like that. Or you can turn on a switch that says auto detect any web components. It's slower that way, but it makes config very easy for you. So those are all there. There's also some tweaks for the report data. So these are things, certain site configurations are installed in subfolders, and Drupal's API for figuring out what the URL of a route is very difficult to work with. And I reached a point where I'm just like, I can't even. So I just have this here to say if in your report you're finding it's duplicating because you're in this configuration, you can tell me what that is and it'll just dedupe that. You can also choose to preserve certain query parameters. So in the report, if you have, say, a paginated page or something, by default, it's considering that all part of one page. But you can say no, persist things like the language or the keys or something like that, and represent these in site reports as if they're separate pages. That's useful. You can also disable the sync altogether if for some reason you just don't want reports at all, or you have privacy concerns, things like that. So that's all there. Great. You can also modify tests or even turn them off. So I'll start with the .pdf test because that is the one that annoys the most people. Um, yeah, you can modify it. So for this particular test, I have exposed config for what the selector is. So in our environment, for instance, we're using the media module, so a lot of our documents are actually at /document/ and don't have PDF at the end of the URL. So we add that as one of the selectors for things that should be flagged as a possible document. You can do all kinds of things like this. You can add, and I have a long list of sample file type, what selector you would want for this that you can put in here. You could also turn it off if you put false in there, or if you don't want to get interrupted. So I said you have a live checker. So as you're typing, editorially will check and flag things. Some people find that distracting and annoying. You can check the box here and say, just don't do that, and it will turn off that whole part of the system. I had one user, their environment, they use paragraph tabs, I think is the module they use. And so you can open and close things. And the thing about the checker is it's only checking what's open. And so the count was changing while they were editing different parts of the page. They found that annoying. So they just turned it off. That's fine. It's configuration. If you don't want to check a particular content type, let's say you want to check these but not these, or maybe even a user, you have a particular user that is perhaps very senior in the organization, or you only want to check pages if there's an edit link, all these kinds of things. There's two settings. One is disable the scanner if these elements are detected, and the other is hide all alerts if none of these elements are present. And so you can do things like automatically turn off on the new search page, or automatically turn off if, say, .user251 is present in the body tag because you've done something to be able to tell who's who. Or you can hide all alerts if the href to the /edit is not present. So it would automatically say hide on content types that a user does not have permission to edit, that kind of thing. So yeah, or if you really don't like some of the tests. This was a recent pull request I got. I love pull requests. um, added the ability to be able to check a box and just turn off a specific test. So that's there. All right. So back to the examples, uh, and how do we solve these problems? So example one, 40 plus alerts on PDF lists on a site that has PDF list as basically a content type, and there's a lot of these. There's a whole bunch of different ways you could tackle this problem. One is through the UI. You could open one of these tooltips, and there's a option to mark all as okay that appears if there's more than, I think, three of the same test flag on the same page. And you could just say mark all as okay for that page, which works until these URLs change, and it doesn't work on the other page. You could go to that configuration for skipping over things, and you could say skip over PDFs in a particular container. So let's just say this block was the .insurability block or whatever. You could say a .link purpose document or external link or whatever. Whatever selector selects these links, and you could just say skip them. Don't even check them if you wanted. You could modify that PDF test selector we had. So you could say if it is the existing thing, href PDF, but not, let's say, an href that includes the /508 folder. I know some government sites have like remediated PDFs in one section and that kind of thing. So you could just say, hey, if it's one of the remediated PDFs or it has remediated in the title or 508 in the title, don't flag it. You could do that. You could just turn off the PDF test altogether for that particular site. Or you could turn off the checker on insurability nodes. Let's just say if this was a content type, you could just say, don't even run editorially on this content type. It is just showing a view that is exposing a list of fields, and we don't upload things until they're okay, and whatever. There's just a lot of ways to tackle this based on the nuance of what you're trying to accomplish. Example two, those truncated, those hidden tips in accordions. So, first thing you do is a little bit of config. So you tell editorially about this at a time. So say elements with overflow hidden, maybe it's just truncated. It's like kind of half off screen. You can give it selectors for those, and editorially will try a little harder to position them. Um, But what we're really going for is things where the theme needs to open the accordion first, because that's really where you want to go. If editorially tries to jump into showing something that's hidden by an accordion, what you really want is for your theme to open that accordion first, and then the tip pop open. So you give it a list of things for which you've written the JavaScript to open the thing first. So .accordion, .tablist, .carousel, whatever. You give it a editorially list. If you do that, when it tries to open this, it is going to throw a JavaScript event. It's going to be called edly show hidden, and this event is a thing that JavaScript can then do something with. You create an event listener. This is the example code. So you'd say document.add event listener for edly show hidden, and then you do whatever you want when this event gets thrown. And that event is going to come with some handy things. So it's going to come with a detail array, and in the detail array is going to be a result. E.detail.result is going to be a number. This is result number one. This is result number two. And once you have that, you can just pull from the edly.results object. This is my big old thing. I take all my tests and I create this list of results in JavaScript. You can say, hey, Edly, get me result one from that list. I'm going to want to do something with it. There's a bunch of these events. So there's run custom tests. We'll talk about that later. That lets you write to that Edly results list. There's Edly results ready, basically, which lets you read from it and do things. That's when the Drupal sync happens that sends things off to the reports. While the tips are opening, there's an Edly paneled open event that says I've popped open the panel for some reason. There's Edly show hidden, which is what we're talking about now, and there's Edly pop, which means a tip just popped open, and that lets you modify the tip. Yeah, there's two little stars here saying these events must be enabled in config. Run custom tests and show hidden. Those events only get thrown if you've gone into config and say I have things where the theme is going to show the hidden thing or is going to do custom tests because there's a response. It's a call and response. If you start doing this, editorially is going to wait for the response. So we're going to put together. We added an event listener for Edley show hidden. I'm going to say const L, the element is going to be edley.results, edetail result one, dot element, because that edley results object, if I were to explore it as a developer, and this next 90 seconds is really for developers, there's a dot element reference in there to the thing that editorially is flagging as having a problem. So this now means I have a reference to the actual thing with the problem. And then I now do whatever my theme wants. So in our example, I can say, okay, from that element, get the closest accordion container and find its toggle button to open it and click it. Like 5 lines of code. And this, in our theme, then pops open the accordion, and editorially is waiting. It's about a third of a second after it throws this event before it opens the tip. So you have a time window in which to get this done. So another example. So Edley pop. That was that last thing. The Edley pop event happens when a tip is popping open. So one of the things we can do with that, I can add an event listener for Edley pop, and I can go get that marked element. This detail for Edley pop includes that result itself directly. And then I can do something like if that marked element is part of a layout builder block, then in that tip, hide the page editor button. So I only want to see the layout builder editor button, that kind of thing. Or you could add in your own custom editor. If let's say you want to say if the tip is flagging an image, then I'm going to get that image's media ID and give it a media item editor. Whatever, you do whatever you want. The point is editorially is just giving your developer the ability to modify a tooltip however they want. Change the language, change the color, have fun. All right, example 4. Yes, so the Edley panel to open, when anything is, with the panel itself is opening to start drawing stuff. This is something in our environment. We use that event to turn off the sticky header. We have a sticky header when you're scrolling on some of our sites. You don't want the tips sliding under or in front of it, so we just turn off the sticky header when editorially is drawing tips. It just makes it a little smoother. Yes. So, custom tests. We're doing great on time. So, writing custom tests. This is example. It says this link might be broken. Editorially is not a link checker. But if you have a link checker and you know what broken links are on a page, you can tell editorially, here's this list of broken URLs, and I want you to mark them as broken. So this is a screenshot from a user that sent this in, and I was very proud of them. And it highlights the broken links on the page. So if you want to do something like that, there are 5 steps. Step 1 is config. In that list of editorially config, there is a custom tests field that is a number. You add 1. The reason this is a number is because it's a call and response. Editorially will throw an event saying run your custom test. And then you might have 5 different custom tests, and a module might have another one. Whatever it is, then, in that situation, there'd be 6 custom tests. Editorially will wait until it's heard 6 events called back to say I'm done before it continues on. So that's why this is a number-based thing. So you're going to set the number to 1. You're going to need to find what you want to mark. You're going to need to create your tip title and body, what text should go in there. You're going to add your result to that big old object of results, and tell editorially you are all done. So we're going to find elements. So we'll create another event listener. Edley run custom tests is the event. And then you do whatever you want at that point. I mean, this is a developer moment. You're going to go find your stuff. But I will say there is a function that editorially provides called find elements. If you use edley.findElements, it will query the document with all the rest of the config in mind. You said what parts of the page you want to check. You've said what parts of the page you want to skip. It puts all of that together into a big fancy selector. And if you've told it to dive into Shadow DOM and do dynamic checking, all that stuff, it's aware of all that. So it just makes your job easier as a developer to use this. You don't have to, but it makes life easy. So I could say edly find elements, and it has two things you pass it. One is just a reference of what you want to call your thing. So let's call it not in table for this test we're creating. And then what selector you're going to use. And I'm going to use a selector of table.widget. Let's just pretend we have some kind of fancy widget we have that people really shouldn't put in a table cell. So that's going to be our example. And then I can run edly elements. I can work through what it returned. And for edly elements dot not in table, I can say, for each of these, do whatever. Do some more filtering, do some more tests, that kind of thing. So at this point, we have a list of things with problems. All right, step 3 then, we're going to say what we want the tip should be on these things. So I can say edly.m, with capital M, this is the messages object for editorially. This is, and if you have translation running, this is what Drupal translates. Edly.m is then the current language. You can say edly.m, whatever you call it, dot not in table. Let's just say that's going to be the name of our test. And again, this takes two things. One is the title, and one is the tip contents. And so I can say title, and this is a plain text string. Please do not put our widgets in tables. The tip is a function because some tests want to pass things back, like say the text of the alt text or the text of the link or whatever. So you have the ability to do that then. And so we can say our tip is going to be a paragraph that says don't put our custom widgets in tables. Step 4, pass back the results. So edly.results, that's the list of all the results for the page. So I can say my results, for each thing I found, push to the edly results table, a reference to the element, what the test name is, what the content of that tip is, the position. Should this tip be inserted before begin? This is the JavaScript has a insert adjacent element, whatever. Look up insert adjacent element. You can say before begin or after begin. You don't want to insert a tip inside a link or a button. That's why it's there. So you would insert outside a button or a link or inside a paragraph. And a dismissal key. So we have that you can mark as okay and mark as hidden. That comes from a key. The key is a somewhat of a unique identifier. So that can be anything. If a link, I usually use the link's href attribute. It's a paragraph, you might use the text of the paragraph, but you just get something that's a string and pass it to edly.dismissal key to create it. This is just a function that creates a plain text string and truncates it at a certain length. Nothing fancy. But that will give a unique string so that when someone dismisses your test, it dismisses that one and not the 4 others on the same page. And it'll sync that back to Drupal. So that's what the dismissal key is for. If you want it to be a red alert that cannot be dismissed, you just say dismissal key false. And false means this is not dismissible. And then you tell editorially you're done. So I have let all done equal new custom event edly resume document dispatch event all done. And the edly resume event is what editorially is waiting for before it continues. When we said you give it a count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's counting how many times it hears edly resume before it moves on. So editorially runs its tests. It asks for custom tests. It gets back the custom tests, and then it draws the event and pops open. And here it says, please don't put our widgets in tables. They explode on mobile or whatever. Edit this content. Mark is checked in OK. Ignore. It has all that ignore stuff because we gave a dismissal key, and you've just written a custom test. Congratulations. So we use this for all kinds of stuff. So it's there. And if you write a test that you think other people might want, open a ticket, and I'll pull it in as a new test that's in the default. It's great. That's my quick run through. Left a bunch of time for questions, so I'm going to back out from sharing for a moment, take questions. I will say the library documentation is at editorially.princeton.edu. That's with ones. Drupal module /project/editorially. You will find me as at it may be JJ on the Drupal Slack and all kinds of places. And I am going to stop sharing now.
You do have one question from
All
Brian
right.
Smith. Is there an option to show editorially for a node page only when the current user is the node's author or is the editor of a revision of the node?
There's a lot of ways you could tackle that. I'm assuming in that case that only the editor would see Drupal's edit link. If that's correct, You could use one of those settings that says like disable unless this is on page and just say only show if there's an edit link. You could also pretty much anything you send in the theme. If you could just find something on the page that's a CSS selector that's different for someone that has permission or not, you could do it that way. I have not exposed like a Drupal hook where you could, at the module level, make that kind of change. If you help me, I could do that. But that's how I've tackled that in the past, finding some selector that changes on the page based on whether someone has permission to edit it.
Do we have any more questions? Okay, last call. Thank you so much, John, for agreeing to be our June presenter. This information is so useful
Good.
because
Thank you all.
accessibility is very important.
And this is very open source. This is Princeton supports me in this, but please participate. So, yeah, I look forward to pull requests and bug reports from you all.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. See you next month, and everybody stay cool in this hot weather.